Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Content Crowd. My name is Trevor Grimes, and I'm here today with a very good friend of mine who's going to be talking about something that we all find very interesting, which is cash flow and budgeting, but also creating content while you're still trying to figure it all out. I'm here with a good friend and guest of mine, Chris Brown.
So,
Chris, I'll let you go ahead and introduce yourself and tell everybody what you do and how you talk about what you do at parties.
yeah. My name's Chris Brown. I'm a solutions engineer for Truvada. It's a cash management platform. The way I describe what I do is I help people understand how they manage cash. I help people really to understand how they manage cash. And when I'm at parties or in any sort of like public setting, when it comes up, it's usually the example I always give is like, think about like Krispy Kreme. Krispy Kreme is a company that has locations all over the country. And believe it or not, JP Morgan Chase doesn't have a bank in every city that a Krispy Kreme exists in. So for that reason, a company like Krispy Kreme has to bank with a lot of different banks. And so usually they have to have someone to log in to all those banks, download all that data, figure out how much cash they have that morning, and then go about their day, moving cash around, paying their bills, paying back loans, maybe having to go borrow money. Like there's a lot of different things that what's called a treasury team does, but a big part of that's just figuring out how much cash they have. And so Truvada, the company I work for, they offer a platform that aggregates that data and kind of allows people to have that visibility. If there's someone that, has to bank with a lot of banks for one reason or another.
I mean, that's already super interesting to me because I did not know that. Like, I did not the scenario you just laid out about Krispy Kreme and like, yeah, they may bank with JP Morgan, but there's not a physical bank in every city that they have one. So that's super interesting. That's not something I ever really thought about. I guess like when I think about money in terms of how it moves, it's just kind of all like digital in some way, and it doesn't seem like that big of a deal to move it around. But
when you're dealing with your personal bank account, you might, have a few $1,000s or, maybe tens of thousands or however much money you have in your bank account, obviously different for everyone. And that also applies with companies as well. You might have a really massive company that does maybe hundreds of millions of dollars a year in revenue that has tens of millions of dollars in cash at any given time. And, because of that, they have to diversify where those funds are. I mean, just for like liquidity reasons to make sure they have access to funds in the right geographic location, or, if anybody is familiar with SVB as a bank, there was that big failure. And banks, it is common for banks to fail, somewhat common, depending on the economic environment, and your funds could be at risk if you're, a really large company like Krispy Kreme that has all your money in one bank. So for that reason, you have to diversify where your cash is, and as a result, have to aggregate that information every day to figure out what you can do with that cash. And a lot of personal accounts and like software products for people as individuals allow for a lot more fluidity with how information gets moved around. But when you start talking like corporate banking and, large corporate finance teams, there's a lot more control just because there's more money at risk. I mean, it's not just a few $1,000s that we're talking about. It could be tens of millions or hundreds of millions of dollars worth of cash that, as a CFO or, the board or whatever, they want to make sure that they know exactly where that money is, how it changes hands, when it goes out the door. And so there's just a lot of control and security risk around that sort of thing.
Yeah, that's super interesting. I do want to segue though into sort of why you're here, because I think like anybody that's watching may be wondering, why are we talking about cash flow and stuff like this? Like I'm definitely not a finance guru or a finance show. So I want to sort of lead into why I have you here and why I asked you to be here. And just for some quick background, we've been friends since maybe I was in early college and you were still in high school, maybe. So it's been quite a while.
15 years, maybe?
Yeah, probably something like that. Yeah.
Amazing.
And we've worked together, not at a place, but we've done freelance projects together, and we've collaborated on a lot of different projects and things like that. And what you've always been really good at is just sort of like testing and experimenting and like putting things out there. I mean, you put a quote from Alex Hormozi in your questionnaire, and I'm going to bring that up too because a lot of the people I work with are we're all in the same camp. But I do also remember like, a few years ago, like going through like the 4-hour work week, and you're like, just set up stuff and test it and find out interest and see what happens. And you've always been super good at that. And I think like where people get hung up on trying to test is they spend too much time in like their why in the beginning instead of just like going and doing it. And you've kind of always just went and done that. So I love to like just kind of talk through, some of the things you've done and things like that, and how you go about testing and how you create things while you're still building it, and how that has worked out for you, not in terms of being like a content creator, but being somebody who has become known, as somebody who does the things that you do really well.
Yeah. I mean, it has been a lot of trial and error. Maybe it's because I hit my head on something when I was younger that gave me some sort of like bold confidence to like do that sort of thing. But life's short, and I feel like I've got something to say, and I'm trying to figure out how to say it. And I'm trying to figure out how to just like tell, I guess, my story, try to talk about what I do and what I know, because I've seen the impact it has had on my life personally with my family, but also now in my career, I see the impact that, the work that I do and kind of the perspective that I have on the world, especially when it comes to money, I've just seen the impact of that. And I've seen it help, in a personal situation, I've seen it help my family avoid bankruptcy. In a career and like professional perspective, I've seen it, help companies avoid bankruptcy and have to, figure out what to do anyways with their money. So yeah, creating content around that is tricky, I find. One, because I'm trying to learn what the best format for me to get that information out of my head is, which I've recently come to the realization that it's writing for me. But then also, taking something, as sensitive as your financial situation, which is, everyone has a financial situation that they're dealing with, right? You're always faced with difficult financial decisions, and how you navigate those decisions, I find to be really interesting. And I really enjoy talking to people about that sort of thing. But it's tough to build that trust with someone short term in like a moment to get to the point to where they're sharing with you some of their most sensitive, personal information, right? And there's in the industry, there's a lot of financial products out there that people are trying to sell. There's a lot of credit products that people are trying to sell. There's a lot of slimy people out in the world in every industry, right? But also finance, because it's so lucrative. And it's just, it's tough to figure out how to communicate not only the knowledge that I have, but also try to tell it in a way that other people can kind of understand and grasp, if that makes sense.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned like, maybe you hit your head that gave you some sort of like,
I've got a scar. You can see it.
Oh yeah. Me too. When next time I shave my head, I got a big scar across the back of my head. You mentioned like I hit my head. I think it gave me like some sort of like unfound amount of like confidence or something like that. And I will say, like, I agree with that. Not the hitting your head thing, but you've definitely always been a very confident person. And I know, like, sending ideas back and forth to you over the years, you've always just been like, just do this, like, just try it out. Like, spend a few $100s on ads and see what works. And then you'll know it's worth the investment to know that. And so, I love to know, like, you just mentioned that you've kind of figured out that like writing has been sort of like your best avenue for getting your point across. But what was either the thing that ticked over, or was it like a book or something that made you like decide like, hey, I'm going to create content around this? Like most people go to work and they live their lives and they're not always thinking like, how do I get this out there? So what was sort of like the turning point or the knob that ticked or whatever, that made you say like, I want to create content around this because this makes sense in what I'm trying to do?
It'd be tough for me to try to pick a particular moment because it feels cumulative, right? It feels like there's been a lot of things that have kind of built on like layers of paint, that have kind of built to allow me to kind of have the perspective that I do now. But I would say, early on, I learned about Dave Ramsey through his book, Total Money Makeover. That was kind of my introduction into like how someone could manage their money. And that sort of format was something that I was able to consume, like long form text. Yeah. And then also I remember in school at a young age, in English class, writing papers and writing poems and doing things like that. I always got good feedback from my teachers. Yeah. And then when I would attempt to, blog as a young kid, like when blogging, I mean, blogging's been around for a while, right? But for me, it kind of came to my attention more when I was like around 13 or 14. I tried creating a blog and writing, and I had some feedback from that, and just a few people that saw it. They're like, "Hey, you're pretty good at this." And so all of those little moments, along with then finding Gary Vaynerchuk. Honestly, I mean, that may be cliche to say, but like, I think hearing someone like that kind of break through, and this was back in 2016, maybe 2015 or 14, maybe 2016, when I first like kind of learned about him and his demeanor and how he talked. And it was just very new for me, coming from, we grew up in the same part of the world, like North Alabama, Southern, very, rural part of the world, very conservative. And so that was just a voice that speaking of Gary Vaynerchuk, just a voice I'd never really heard before. Yeah. And so, hearing him talk about content and then I guess with just the belief that I felt like I had something to say, kind of all just culminated into this momentum of trying to do what I'm doing now,
Yeah. I think that was about the same time. I probably didn't. Also, I don't think like saying Gary Vee is like people give him a hard time, but when you like really like listen to him and not just things that people have clipped, you're like, there's a lot of wisdom there. I think that's probably at the time that I think I discovered like Tim Ferriss and started and I think like one of the first interviews I listened to him was with Blake Mycoskie. Hopefully I said that correctly, but the owner of Tom's Shoes, and he was just talking about as a kid what he did for like work, and he was like, my dad wanted me to get a job and I didn't or whatever, and more money than I would have working a 9-to-5 for minimum wage or whatever, and those kind of things like also changed the way I thought about a lot of things, and so I think like hearing that voice, like you said, that you've never heard, also encouraged me to do a lot of the things and think about the way that I do things as well. Like, having that mindset around like, how can I create something that compounds in a way that will one day not require me to trade whatever that is directly for hours. I mean, I'm seeing it like compound now, just to be honest with everybody, like with this, I'm already seeing this show compound over only 4 episodes into it, and even just like finding where it makes the most sense to spend your time. Like I just been more active on LinkedIn recently. I just like had somebody reply to a comment about something that I said and asking if they could purchase like a email sequence like playbook that I mentioned, and I'm just like, I don't even have that packaged up in any way. I'm just going to give it to him for free and just like give me some feedback on it, and that'll be the thing. Yep. It's just like it's I think like you mentioned, like just sort of like going for it and just like doing it, and it's you're right. It's totally cumulative. Like you're not going to find the first thing you do is not always going to be a hit. Maybe it is, but like, dude, standing where I'm at.
Well, man, oh, sorry. Go ahead. No, I was just saying, like, I was just thinking about like the term cringe. Like, I've done so much cringy stuff on the internet, and if anyone that finds me here today goes and looks at stuff on my feed from years ago, right? I mean, yeah. I didn't, and maybe you can relate to this, maybe not. I didn't grow up necessarily like on the internet, like maybe a lot of people that are on the internet today did. Even our generation, like my wife had a computer in her room, and was on IM Messenger and like all that stuff at like 11 or 10 or something, like really young. And we had a family computer, and it was pretty like restrictive in a lot of ways. And I had a lot of interest in it, but there was just not really, that just didn't have the access to those like environments, especially social media environments. My family was pretty restrictive on, like, couldn't create a MySpace. Facebook was only okay because our preacher was on Facebook, that sort of thing. So it was like, and that was like in, maybe 2014, or no, not 2014, maybe like 2012 or something, 2011. So
Yeah.
it's like by that time, I don't know what the etiquette is sometimes. So
Yeah.
you know, it can be tough to just figure out like how to be on the internet,
Yeah.
and be authentic, but also like be professional and like, you know, try to meet people where they're at in terms of like how you're trying to present your ideas.
Yeah. Well, so for you, like that's an interesting point that you bring up, because I feel like I was like partially raised by the internet in some way, just because, you know, I had the same like family computer and, you know, this big like compact Pisario, you know,
Yeah.
you know, but we didn't have high speed internet until I was in college. We had dial up, but I was just like, you know, on exploring things and learning about things and waiting, you know, 20 hours for like a YouTube video to load
Yeah.
so I could
Yeah.
watch, you know, things like that. But, you know, like I was just sort of always thought it was like really cool and interesting and things that were going on. And so I've, you know, and when like we finally had high speed internet and I started spending more time on YouTube and I started like really seeing like vloggers or people doing stuff with their face on camera, like not creating skits, just kind of like doing something or talking to a camera, I was like, oh, that's like really cool. So that's sort of like, that was sort of like my awakening there of like, I want to do something one day where I'm just like standing in front of a camera and talking, and whether it's like, you know, like a radio show or a video show, whatever it evolves into, like, I want to do something like that. And sometimes I forget that that's not everybody's like thought process, because dude, I pitch videos to people all the time. I'm like, just record a video on your phone and put it on this landing page. Like it'll make it so much better, and it'll do, you know, the conversions will be different and people will see that you're a real person and not just another software, you know? So for you, like I'm interested in like, have you had that connection where you're like, I want to start doing video, or do you think like video is like not an option for you? I mean, you're here now, obviously, like maybe this is your bridge, but I'm just wondering, like, is video the next part of your progression and making content about, you know, cash flow and budgeting and all those things?
It has to be. I mean, it has to be.
Yeah.
I've always found software interesting, so I'll start there. Like, you know, as soon as I always wanted to, you know, I loved Apple as a company. Like from a young kid, I just thought like an iPod was so cool. And then, you know, but to have an iPod, you had to have iTunes. Well, our family computer was like a gateway, old piece of like something. I don't know what it was. Some gateway that ran like Windows 95. So I couldn't have iTunes. So it was like, I had to go to my grandmother's house and download iTunes because she had something that had like an XP with Windows 2001 or whatever on it. So I loved like going through the file menus and figuring that stuff out. And then because of that, I found myself being the one when we had to do like projects in school to edit the videos, right? You know, that's probably something you did as well. You have to make like a video recording of, you know, some book that you're reading or some like creative thing that your English teacher asked you to do, right? So I was that person and I could just figure it out. And because of that, I found that, you know, I ended up just, you know, doing more of it. And as I've gotten older, I've realized that I like being in front of crowds. Like I like performing. I mean, I was in band growing up. Like I got in front of, you know, hundreds, if not thousands of people often with a bunch of other people, but still nonetheless, like some sort of performance. There's a performance component there. And I like that. And I realized that I'm good in those environments. I'm good in public speaking environments. And if there's a camera up, it doesn't really bother me one way or another. So I think with those maybe attributes or with those capabilities, there has to be a way that I can figure out how to make video content around this topic. And writing is a way for me to process a lot of these thoughts that I have and these ideas to a point to where it's refined so that I can then go and talk about it confidently in a conversation like this.
Yeah. Yeah. So had you already thought about doing video before just now? I mean, I'm sure you have, but have you like seriously like been like, I'm going to start doing this?
Some of it has been more on like from the angle of like figuring out how to create videos like in like a reel form or some sort of like short, you know, a YouTube short or a reel or whatever, like that don't include me like having to stand up and put my hand in front of my face and record myself. Cause I don't really know. I've just not done a lot of that. Right. So my perspective has been like, well, if I can figure out how to maybe edit videos, then there's that. But I also like the idea of like what we're doing today, which is just like recording a long form conversation. And or I've done speaking events as well, where I've like gotten up and presented, like recording stuff like that, and then figuring out how to clip that later.
Well, I mean, me and you used to record our phone calls.
Oh, I have a ton of them. Like, there's so much out there that I know that can be used, and there's been a lot of cool stuff that you and I have talked about. But it's just like a part of it's a matter of just like figuring out how to process it all.
Yeah. I would definitely say like I've been big on doing video stuff, and I've tried different platforms and things like that. But then when you start getting into, and I'm bringing this up because I'm wanting like anybody that's listening who's sitting here thinking about how to make video, I want to give them like a bit of like thought provoking advice maybe. But like if you've got a 9 to 5 and you've got a family, or you don't, or whatever, you have things to do, like you've got a lot of things to do, and it's kind of like sitting down to, how long is it going to take me to make a video? How long, and then how long is it going to take me to edit it and write all these things? And it's like, if you can break it down to like making a video for an hour on one day, or writing for an hour on one day, making a video for an hour another day, and then editing it, like there's it still adds up. But I would say what we're doing right here has been like one of the most like paradigm shifting ways that I've thought about creating content, because I'll write stuff and put it up, and I've thought about putting videos on LinkedIn too, and I've got some that I've made like in the past. I'm like, I might could start throwing those up and start building back into that, but it's still like setting up a camera and like talking and all that stuff. And Joseph, who was my first guest, he was like, just go live and just do a live show and talk for an hour, and then when you hang up, just don't do anything else with that. Like, that's it. Like, hang up and hang up the call and go off, and then all you focus on is getting your next guest or getting your guest, and that's it. And then you show up the next week and just do the same thing and just talk, and that's it. And that's all you have to do for a while. Like, you can do that for 6 months and build an incredible amount of like connections. And if you do one a week, that's how many hours of content do you have now? That was, and it was like the thing that really like shifted my mind was like, you'll wait around for the right time to do something, or I'm not going to start a podcast until I have more people to listen when I start up, or I'm not going to start going live on LinkedIn or whatever until I have more people that are there to show up, or I'm not going to stream or do whatever I want to do until there are people there to actually enjoy it with me. And I've thought about that too as well. Like in my free time, the little bit of free time I have, like I will try to like stream on Twitch, like playing like video games and stuff like that, because it's just like just something to like turn my mind off from everything else. And for so long I've been like, I'm not going to do that until somebody is there to like talk with me, because otherwise it's just kind of boring, right? But this has been, I'm doing a little bit extra and I'm streaming to some other places, but really like, I spend an hour a week to get on a phone call or, get on a live stream and talk to somebody. And like, that's a ton of like content that's being created. Like from the clips that I could make from this, if I wanted to, I could make 7 clips. I'm posting a video every single day from this. And then the next episode comes out and I've got 7 more. And it's like, it actually, the barrier to entry seemed so much smaller when I really thought about like, just show up every week and do the same thing and like work on building a connection and not a community at first. And all those other things will compound. And like, it's just been incredibly like, I look forward to it, because it's like, it's not a stressful thing to like sit here and have to video and ask questions and edit it. I'm just thinking like, I'm just going to talk to some friends for an hour. And then when we get off the call, like, I'm not going to think about it until the next week, like I can kind of, but I put the content out there, and I've got this live video that is now up and going.
And you built some momentum. That's the thing. Like a part of it, I think what your friend was like really speaking to was just the momentum part, right? Like you just got to start, and you got to keep doing that one thing. And then once you've got a pile of stuff to work with, then you'll know it'll be more clear what to do with it then when there's more of it. That's something that I've realized, that I have a lot of content. Like you said, we've recorded there's probably hours of conversations that you and I have had that can be used in some form or fashion. And kind of an exercise I'm going through right now is just figuring out where all that stuff is and organizing it. And seeing like, okay, well, like what is all out there, because I've gotten pretty good at the capturing part. Like even right now, like I have this little voice recorder that's going in the background. I'm sure you're happy to give me this audio and video, but it's like, I'll have it too. Yeah. And if anything is a reference point to know, like, we had this conversation. And I just find that really interesting, that idea of capture.
Yeah, I mean, you've had that video recorder, that voice recorder for a long time, right? I mean, that's been kind of like a, I don't know, maybe like a cornerstone in like your content strategy, without calling it a content strategy. If you just like, I've got this recording here, so I can always have ideas. And I which the voice recorder is awesome. I do similar with like notes and stuff, where I just like, sometimes when I'm out and I'm not thinking is when I have like a really good idea about something. But no, I think that's the idea of like we want to create content now and put it out now, but then it takes forever to do it and then edit it, and you get burnt out and then you don't want to do it anymore. But yeah, like spending the time, like this is week 4 of me doing this, so I've got like 4 hours of content like that I can make and re-upload or do whatever. And it's been build that momentum. It's already started compounding at week 4, which is like crazy to think that, I never, and not to say that happens that fast for everybody, and we have different levels of ideas of success. But yeah, I think getting past the idea of like, I've got to create something and put it out there versus I just need to show up every week at the same time and wear the same clothes, or, wear something, just be as on brand with myself as possible. And like, that's it. I don't have to, I don't have to do all these things. I don't have to have a website set up or anything. Like, I just need to show up and do something. And that's like the kicker for just the content.
And sometimes that for people doesn't have to be video. It doesn't have to be a form like this. It can be writing. It can be drawing. It can be performing, right? Maybe if you're someone that wants to get on stage, right? You got to go find some place to get on stage regularly. If you're a writer, you've got to find that moment every day or once a week or whatever, however frequent you can start doing it, to write and to just to capture your thoughts or capture your ideas. If you're an artist and you like to draw or paint or, create crafts, whatever that is, like you've got to find that time to capture that stuff to figure out what's even there. And that's just been, and I'm speaking to myself more than anything, because that's been such a like eye-opening idea for me. As someone that does want to like share what I know, believe that I have something to share. You've got to put in the work to capture that, to figure out what it even is that you're trying to, like, what are you even trying to say, right? What are you trying to tell?
Yeah, I like the idea of how you frame that as like capturing. It's not necessarily a video. Like it could be a video, and it could be it could be faceless. You could have an AI narrator do it for you, or you could narrate it yourself. But it's still your words that you're putting out and your knowledge you're putting out, or it's the art, or it's the craft, or it's the performing or the dancing, whatever. Like, just find a place that you can, capture what you're wanting to do. In whatever avenue.
Or you could use the word express. You could use the word emote. Like whatever that thing is. Yeah. We've all got something in us that we want to share. We've all got a unique story. We've all got a unique perspective, and everyone, is going to come to that in their own way. But to be able to, live, I think a big part of being a human is expressing and is sharing. And somehow you've got to find that for yourself in this world that we live in, with the internet and with video recording capabilities and audio and whatever else, there's sort of like forms of media exist. I don't know. I think we've all got a story to share. And if you believe that you do have one to share, you got to figure out a way to kind of capture that or express that.
Yeah. Yeah, because it just becomes almost like a burden of self if you can't.
It can be frustrating
in some way.
It's been frustrating for me. Yeah. I mean, the way I talk automatically gets like, I get underestimated. I get understated because like of just the way that I sound when I speak, because there's a stereotype with people that sound the way I do. Right. And the way we do. Exactly. I don't even hear it, but I know that I've got it. And it's just, it's frustrating at times, but I've realized that, I have to be better at communicating then. If I can't, I'm not going to change the way I talk, but what I can do is change the words that I use, and I can change the expressions and the emotions that I bring to those words and be able to articulate those in a way that actually communicate the ideas that I have.
Yeah. It is as hard as I've tried to eliminate the accent. It
No,
never fully
I mean,
goes
it's
away.
underrated. I think, yeah, I think the whole South is underrated. But that's just me. I'm a little partial.
Yeah, I got one more quick question, and maybe it won't open to too many like avenues, but I'm just kind of interested in your thought of like you mentioned this, but how do you balance volume and authenticity? Because when it comes to creating content, it's like you're supposed to be authentic, but also you've got to pump out content, 3 times a day or whatever. So how have you found like balancing those two, and even the authenticity of just talking with your natural accent? How have you balanced?
I'm still figuring that out. I think it's a process, like depending on where you're at in life kind of dictates like what you have the capacity to do.
Yeah.
For me, it's a matter of just trying to first capture and then process at whatever pace that I can actually manage.
Yeah.
That isn't going to burn me out. Like you have to respect yourself at the end of the day. Like, yes, of course we have a story to tell. Like we want to share with the world what we believe and our opinions and everything else, but also like you got to eat, you got to take care of your family, you got to mow your grass and like keep your house clean and do all the, take care of yourself. Yeah. And so like those things take time too. So you can really only do as much as you can do. And so whatever time you do have, like, you got to be intentional. You got to be, strategic. Like you said, I'm going to record on Monday. I'm going to process on Tuesday. I'm going to edit on Wednesday. I'm going to clip on Thursday and post on Friday. And if you only got 7 minutes a day to do that, hey, you only got 7 minutes a day. You got to figure out how to make it work. And the discipline of doing that, right? I'm going to spend 12 minutes every morning doing this thing, no matter what. And I'm going to show back up again tomorrow, and I'm going to do it again, and I'm going to keep figuring it out. And that's all you can really do. And then the output's going to be the output.
Yeah. I mean, that's true. Yeah. And that's even if it is 7 minutes a day, like that's better than having not done anything at all. Sometimes,
it's better than living with the resentment and frustration.
Yeah. I mean, 15 minutes at the end of the day you can almost, if you've got some thoughts going through, you can write a LinkedIn post in 15 minutes. Maybe you don't have the time to go and like engage and follow a bunch of people or whatever, but you can like sit down and like write a post, maybe not, and then after a week of writing a post, you can spend 30 minutes on Saturday morning maybe and turn that into a blog and have that on.
I'll take that a step back even further. Go to your phone, right? Make a note in your phone every day. Like you spend 7 minutes just expressing.
Yeah.
Whatever, if it's a note in your phone, if it's a sticky note that you draw on, like if you're an artist or if you're a performer or whatever, like it just goes back to like whatever that form of expression is. If you're like at completely zero, there has to be an effort to capture or express that thing. And then once you have enough of that, like you're a little bit further along, you've done this enough, like, okay, I got to get in front of the camera. I got to start talking to people. I got to connect. And then I'll figure the rest of it out later. But other people may be in a position where like they may be scared to post on LinkedIn. They may be scared to put a TikTok up.
Yeah.
Well, maybe just record it for yourself, right? At the end of the day, it's got to be for you anyways.
Right.
And so if that means you gotta keep it on your phone for a little while, and then maybe in 3 weeks, go back and kind of see what you've got to work with, then it may be more clear what you need to do from there.
Yeah. I love that you mentioned that. I just want to share this real quick because I know you're a big list maker, and you just mentioned like going back to a list like 5 weeks later, or whatever. I've got this notebook where I've got my like catch-all list here where I just write absolutely everything that I need to think about. And then when I'm processing it, it goes into my actual like notebook here of things that I need to do. But that's it. But whatever the process is, I think that's sometimes we put things on a list, and if we don't do it that day, it's like, did I lose it? Did it become something that I've known to do? But I just went and looked at a list yesterday and started marking things off and making new notes because I did accomplish those things eventually. Like they just sat here in this list that doesn't have any purpose other than to just catch my thoughts, the capture of those things. And then I've processed that either through my day-to-day or whatever. And I think like, finding some way to capture either a voice note or notes in your phone or a physical notebook is, and finding time to do that is incredibly helpful.
You could also, that we started with that Hormozi quote, capture once, repurpose relentlessly. You could also say capture and refine relentlessly, right? It's like an effort, like You might write a blog, you might make a clip today of a certain part of this conversation that you want to post right now. And in, 3 years, you come back to this mountain of content and you're like, actually, I've got a new perspective on that. Actually, there's a different frame there that I saw. Then you can refine it then. I do this with my notes. And part of it's like kind of being kind to yourself and saying, hey, I'm going to express what I can about this idea, and then I'm going to leave it. And then maybe tomorrow or next week when I'm kind of going through things and I'm trying to refine that idea again, I'll edit it a little bit more, maybe I'll just take another pass at it or try to take it with a new perspective and see what comes out of it. And eventually, you do that 15, 30, 50 times, you're going to have something pretty good at the end of that. So I don't know, there's like that idea of just like, there's the capture, but there's also the refinement or the processing of it.
Yeah. And don't be afraid to reuse something, change your perspective on it, update the way you feel about it. I'm going on the Scrappy ABM podcast in June sometime. And what Mason wanted me to do was like, hey, go back and listen to your first ever episode where you were on the Scrappy ABM podcast and come back. And I want this episode to be about like, what has changed and what is the same? Like, what are your new perspectives now that you've been working in this process for a year? What does it look like? And even with this, with the content crowd, I'm going to have Joseph come back and critique me and be like, what can I do better? So it's like, I'm going to refine that. And then I'm going to I've already set it up, or I'm going to have a third interview with him where I'm going to, as being my redemption, I'm going to do better in interviewing him again. He was my first guest. He's going to be my, my redemption arc at some point, and it'll kind of keep going from there. So, because I know these first 4 episodes might have been a little rough, but hopefully getting better and remembering questions that I ask and not asking a question that's 4 questions rolled into one. I'm still doing that. I'm trying to be better at it, but I've got to improve. So
it's communication. I mean, communicating's tough. And it's something we can all get better at.
Yeah, totally agree.
It's everything though too, right? I mean, it's everything.
Yeah.
It's everything. Like I think about like cash flow and cash management when in a business context, or like in terms of just like what you're able to do as a business, or even what you're able to do personally. Like you can't eat unless you got money, right? Or unless you steal, I guess. But you gotta, if you want to live somewhere, you got to pay your rent or you got to pay your mortgage. And so like a lot of what we do is driven by our financial situation and how much money we have.
Yeah.
And so I think the same thing with just like how we interact as humans is obviously through communication. And so it's everything. So the better you can get at communicating, the better you can get at managing your cash. Like, there's going to be fruit from that labor.
And, to be honest, I mean, this is kind of a silly analogy, but we already kind of do that naturally. I think we have conversations during the day. And I think if you're a normal person, you probably like rethink about those conversations in the shower before you're going to bed, and you relive and you refine those moments. And you're like, how could I handle that differently next time? And I mean, that's just take that same process to everything else you do. Like just because I write a piece of content and put it out there doesn't mean it lives forever. And that way I can change it. I can have a shower thought and argue with myself about, the way I said it or the way I didn't say it, So I think, that's immediately I thought about, we already do that naturally, I'm sure. And we just need to apply that to content or to, our budget and our money situation or whatever that may be. So
you just got to keep coming back to it. And I think that the unfortunate thing about shower thoughts is that they're lost forever. You can't go back and really look at that conversation you had with yourself to see, what really came out of it. But with the notes on your phone or with, the art that you draw or the recordings that you make, you can go back to those and you can see like, oh, that's what I was trying to say, or, oh, that's where I messed that thing up. And then you can more easily refine it. And that's just going to make the next conversation or the next recording or the next piece of art even better.
Yeah, absolutely. This has been awesome. It's been a really great conversation, Chris. I really appreciate you taking the time to come and chat.
Thank you for asking me, man. This is fun. I love just hanging out on these things. I think it's cool, like seeing people that I know do these sorts of things. I think it's great.
I'd love for you to do one so I can return the favor and come back on yours, and we can just swap back and forth. And then who knows? We'll have our own together, and we'll put all those phone conversations to use, and we can start from there.
Oh yeah, I love it.
But cool, man. Well, So Chris, thank you so much for being here. You mentioned people would go find you on LinkedIn. It did not let me tag you in that though. I don't know if that was, I don't know what the issue was with that, but we'll correct that and I'll tag you in this so people can
just
find you on
find me on LinkedIn, Chris Brown, Travada.io. Yeah, you could, if you just look for the guy with the bald head and glasses and beard. I don't think there's too many of those out there.
Yeah, I was like, yeah. There's only one or two out there, so it should be pretty easy. Well, cool. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for watching this